Some truly surprising polling results have just been released that I think say quite a bit of the Canadian media landscape and less about our political landscape. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the sort of polling that's done about who would Canadians vote for in the US presidential election, and it's whoever the Democrat is has like 82% of the vote, and then whoever the Republican is has like, 18%. It's extremely lopsided because Canadians live in a bubble of mostly left wing news. It doesn't matter if the CBC, CTV, Global, City News, if they're pretending to be objective, whenever they shift to foreign affairs, international news, especially American presidential election news. They go into just full eye rolling mode whenever a Republican is saying something. If a Republican take some stance on anything, even if it's the most reasonable common sense position, you will have somebody like Lisa LaFlamme on screen rolling her eyes at Mach speed so that you, as the viewer, know that whatever they said is completely ridiculous, stupid, and you should probably like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris. But some new polling's come out that shows that young Canadians actually really like Donald Trump compared to Kamala Harris, no matter what push that they are putting behind Kamala Harris on platforms like TikTok and Instagram and other social media platforms used by younger people. So these are the poll results that are from Spark Insight. You see that if you were voting in the US election, who do you vote for between these two candidates? And to be fair, Spark Insight has also done, just in general, a much better job conducting this poll. Most of the time, they just grab 1,000 people from anywhere in Canada. They say, do you like Trump or Kamala Harris? And they don't ask detailed questions. This one was done in a better manner, so it has a bit more of a balanced result. It looks like the state of Hawaii, effectively. So 68% of Canadians would vote for Kamala Harris, 32% would vote for Donald Trump. Obviously, very few liberals would vote for Donald Trump. It's 80-20, probably reflecting a lot of Quebecers would be maybe open to voting Trump who are liberals, just since they are more anti-immigration. Conservatives, it's about 50-50, 54% to 46% between Trump and Harris. NDP, 16% Trump, 84% Harris. And also, I think this just proves too, just on those points alone, it gets better with young Canadians later, that it doesn't really matter what party you vote for in Canada. You probably vote for it because of more regional reasons. You probably vote for them because you voted for them 10 years ago and now you still do. The fact that you can get anyone from the NDP or the Liberals to say that they'd vote for Trump really shows that people kind of vote for who they think they're supposed to vote for. And then once you divorce them from the election that's happening locally and you talk to them about what's happening in the US, a lot of those people kind of secretly like Trump. Or at least they don't specifically like Kamala Harris, or they don't know who she is. But now let's jump back down to the demographics polling of you have 18 to 29 and 60 plus. And I don't doubt that they published it this way because this was the more interesting results. Middle-aged voters are probably about the same on some of these issues. So 60 plus voters, only 19% of 60 plus voters would vote for Donald Trump. 81% would vote for Kamala Harris. And remember, Liberals were at 20% and NDP was at 16. So 60 plus voters in Canada, probably not you guys watching this show if you happen to be over the age of 60, but when you poll Canadians who are more likely, disproportionately likely to watch mainstream news, because you've watched television your entire life, that's how you get your news. So 60 plus voters watching Lisa LaFlamme, watching the newscast on CBC, watching Rosemary Barton, they don't like Trump even more than the average liberal voter when you add in all demographics. But then you jump over to the 18 to 29-year-olds, so young Canadians who can vote. 53 would vote Kamala Harris, 47% would vote for Donald Trump. And then you jump down to 18 to 29 men and women. 60% of men 18 to 29 would vote Trump. 33% of women would vote for Donald Trump in Canada in that age bracket. And it demonstrates that when you do not watch mainstream news, when you don't trust Rosemary Barton to tell you the truth straight down the middle, what are the different presidential candidates in the US saying, you're actually far more likely to go and see what those campaigns put out as messages themselves. I also have no doubt a lot of younger people are the people watching outlets on YouTube like True North, like the Daily Wire from the US, like my channel, the National Telegraph here, like a lot of different alternative media who's willing to actually cover the news in such a way where they let the other side say what they want. That's the thing in Canada. Even the left-wing media in the US, the CNNs, MSNBCs, I find that they at least play clips of what Trump actually says. They cover his rally. So even if you're a CNN viewer and Trump's at a rally or doing a press conference and he says something reasonable, you're like, well, that's reasonable. That's not wrong. It's not wrong to want no tax on tips, which then Kamala Harris stole as a policy. It's reasonable to want border enforcement, to build a wall, to have more ICE, enforcement, to cut taxes, all of this stuff, to tariff enemies of the state like Venezuela and Iran and China. It's probably a reasonable thing to do. But in Canada, they never do that because nobody's ever actually in Canada who's watching mainstream media news, like reading the CBC or watching the CBC. You will never be exposed to Trump talking for more than a 10-second clip of him saying something out of context for everyone to tut and cluck their tongues about. Andrew Coyne gets on television in his little power panel or whatever, some other people, and they're all just talking about how non-normal Donald Trump is. And there's things you can criticize about Donald Trump, even though obviously I'd vote for him between Kamala Harris and himself. There's some areas of policy I don't exactly agree with him on, but you shouldn't ever agree with someone 100%. But you'll have Andrew Coyne get on and basically be upset that Donald Trump's not normal. And when he says not normal, he just means that he doesn't fit Andrew Coyne's very shallow aesthetic version of what normal is. Even as Kamala Harris is actually the one with far more radical policies. She's normal because she's aesthetically normal. She's a bit odd too. She's still an odd duck, but she fits into the corporate Democrat appearance. Whereas Donald Trump is very much a weird guy. And I will admit that. Donald Trump is a strange person. You'll meet 2 million people, 10 million people, 1 billion people, and you will not really come across another Donald Trump. So he's weird. But I find that it happens all the time in Canada. You get people who they actually don't know why they dislike him. They just know that he's not normal and he's bad and he's evil. And they can never tell you a straight story about something bad he's actually done. At the same time that when I've talked to a lot of Canadian people at the doors, because sometimes American politics is brought up, you get a lot of people who will almost start whispering and saying yeah, I don't like Trump, but this Biden guy just sucks at being president. I don't know how anybody voted for Biden and with these type of results. And yeah, I don't know either. But that should be it there today. I'm not sure if there's really anything else to go over in this poll. You see the normal distribution you'd expect. 44% of people in Alberta would consider voting for Trump, 36% Ontario, 19% Quebec. But yeah, I'd like to actually see more information on how Spark Insights did its poll, because this is far better than the polls that usually come out where it's 90% whoever the Democrat is, 10% whoever the Republican is. And this has been going on for election after election. This is not a new thing. If you polled Obama versus Mitt Romney back in the day, it would be basically the exact same polling. George Bush versus Kerry, you get very similar results, because in Canada there is the U.S. stereotype that the media likes to rely on, that Republicans are crazy right-wingers and Democrats are moderate, basically somewhere in between the Canadian Liberals and the Canadian Conservatives. They're really not. Most Democrats are basically exactly like Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, if not sometimes a little bit further left if you're a Bernie Sanders type character, or a Kamala Harris, in which they would actually fit in quite well with the federal NDP and Jagmeet Singh, proposing price controls, stuff like this, like anti-scab legislation so you can't fire people striking on the job for absolutely no reason. But yeah. That should be it for me today, guys. If you want to support the show, I have my Give, Send, Go legal fundraiser in the description of this video. For any of you who subscribed recently, because I did have a video go above 100,000 views, I do have a better looking studio most of the time. I just happened to have been in Abbotsford for a while there, helping out the BC Conservatives. I will be going back to BC to help the Conservatives, but I booked a trip to Japan in February. Obviously wasn't going to cancel that. So I will be in Japan for the next couple of weeks, but I'm basically going on a filming blitz of having a bunch of evergreen content that isn't particularly breaking news, but it's just interesting for me to put it out there and, release it slowly over the 2-week period. So it's not like there's just a blank spot where people are wondering if I choked on something or not. But yeah, so there's that. And if you live in BC, I always do have the Abbotsford South EDA you can donate to, at least donate $100 to the Conservative campaign. I know that sounds weirdly demanding, like donate to them, but the thing is that the NDP is literally getting taxpayers to fund them. They get $1.56 per vote that they got every single year from the 2020 election. So they get around like $1.5 million. I think it might be a bit more than that per year, every year up to election day, where the BC Conservatives only had like 50,000 votes, less than that, I believe. So they obviously don't get a lot of money. And that means that it allows the current financing laws, it lets the NDP sort of stay like more, they have a lot more staying power in government simply because they have more money, where it's harder for a small insurgent party to actually make a rise. So if you live in BC, it's like a moral imperative to donate something to the BC Conservatives. You get 75% back in a tax credit up to $100, 50% back up to $550, and 33% back up to $1450. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Have a good one.